one of the secret powers of just content. Learning that you can combine like different areas and that can be a whole new niche.
We have to understand that there's literally only one thing in the world you can control, and that is your mind.
At what point is it like, okay, it's not about achieving some kind of like end result. It's about actually prioritizing the things that matter to you.
In this episode, I'm joined by Aman, a full-time YouTuber and career coach who left his role as a software engineer to help others land roles in tech. We dive into the impact and opportunities of AI, why soft skills are the most underrated keys to success, the truth about growing on YouTube, powerful self-development insights, and how to build real lasting confidence. Remember that my free 7-day guide is linked in the description below. It's completely free and it helps you deal with procrastination, self-doubt, and time management, and much more. For headphone users, just a heads up, Aman has a very great and powerful laugh, so keep that in mind for your volume. I tried to manually go through the whole video and pick out the laughs to turn them down a little bit, but just in case. You're sure to find some golden nuggets in this conversation. Let's go.
Hi, Aman. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks so much for coming on your A+ life.
Absolutely. No, thanks for having me. I'm excited to do this.
Yeah, for sure. So yesterday we actually filmed a podcast on your podcast, and it was really awesome conversation, but I think we just have a lot more to go over, and especially to learn about your story.
Yeah, definitely. I think even during our conversation, I don't even think we got through like 60% of the questions, in fact. So there's like a lot more to go over, and yeah, I would love to provide any knowledge and background I can.
Yeah, for sure. So for those listening, Aman is also a full-time YouTuber, creator, preneur. The new term is like creator / entrepreneur. Yeah. But do you want to talk a little bit about your background, your niche, all that stuff?
Yeah, definitely. So for background on this, obviously my name is Aman, and I'm a full-time YouTuber, creatorpreneur, making videos on computer science, software engineering, and getting jobs in tech. And some background on me, in college, I actually graduated 1 or 2 years ago. I did 5 or 6 internships at companies like Amazon, Shopify, HP. And then I was able to get like a lot of full-time job offers in software engineering. And my channel is kind of teaching other people how to do the same thing. So if someone is doing a computer science degree, has done a boot camp, has graduated a CS degree, and is like struggling with the job market, essentially I teach all the tools, techniques, tactics to actually help out with that and give people jobs in tech.
Yeah, for sure. That's super cool. I think it's very needed, especially in this job market. And even though people say computer science is like a quote unquote easier to get job degree, now it's like a little harder, right? Yeah,
definitely. I find this really interesting because I think there's a perception that the market is extremely bad right now especially I can't speak for other industries, but I can speak for computer science. And I think the perception is that because if you look at like employment rates compared to like 3 or 4 years ago, yeah, like it is objectively harder now with like the layoffs because like companies are hiring less. But actually on paper, CS is still like a really great field to get into. And I think like, I don't know if you've heard this as well. People are like, oh, like CS is dead. Software engineering is over. Like AI is here. I need to like, I don't know, switch fields and become like a teacher or something.
Yeah. There are some memes, reels on Instagram I've seen where like the joke is that the computer science major and he's like, oh, give me a job. And then like his friends have like high paying jobs and it's like switched now. Yeah.
But I feel like, or at least my sense right now is that it's a little bit worse or it's a little bit better than people actually think. And that if you really work hard, if you like actually apply, you make a good resume, you get good at interviewing skills, you get good at networking, you can get a job. It's not doomed is my sense nowadays.
Yeah. Okay. That's a really good perspective to give because if you're not an expert in this field or like you haven't had job experience, I think like especially with social media and like a lot of people who don't know what they're talking about, like giving advice or like thoughts on this could be really disheartening.
Yeah, I think it's a big problem actually, because like I will look at some of the viral YouTube videos in my niche of the past 6 to 12 months, and all of them are about how like the tech job market's done. It's like the thumbnail will be like Google lays off 10,000 more people, and then the title will be like the coding market is worse than I thought, and it's someone crying, right?
Oh no.
those are literally like the videos that are going viral nowadays. Or it'll be someone being like the senior only job market, and then it'll be some like crazy stats in the thumbnail. Right. So, and that stuff sells. Like those videos get views. And I think it provides a perception that things are actually done for. Like it's really, 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 really hard. And not to say that it's not hard. It is very difficult. I've seen it myself. I've like worked with a lot of students and stuff doing this problem. But I see people get jobs like every day. Or every week, in fact. So it is not done for. You're not screwed. Like it is not the case where your entire life has been wasted. It is hard. Nothing in life is like, nothing worthwhile in life is really that easy. It's going to be challenging, but I think it is doable. And I think if you see like the social media landscape, there is a bit of a negativity bias. People like, they know that if they post reels and videos that are on the negative side of things, saying that everything's doomed, they'll get more clicks. So I think I want to provide a voice which is a little bit like, okay, things are actually not as bad as you expect.
For sure. Yeah, I think that basically for any job right now, there could be risk of AI affecting it. So it's not just computer science. And I would even say that like, even though tech kind of has a bad rep right now, even like consulting, when I was a consultant, I would do a lot of tedious tasks that I was like, AI is definitely going to take this over in the future. And there are already startups trying to do consultant jobs. So I'd say like it's more across the board, and that as long as we still have some like human touch points we need, like whether it's interacting with clients or like working together as a team, that like AI is not going to replace it completely.
Yeah, definitely. I think my perception on this is, and I'm not like a AI specific expert here, but my sense is that it's not going to be some kind of binary flip like everyone pretends it is, right? It's not going to be like, oh, one day there's all the jobs and tomorrow they're all gone, right? It's not going to be like that. What it might be is a slow transition from like changing the work we do. So at least in the world of software and programming, all the engineers nowadays have used like AI in their day-to-day work. So even when I was like doing my full-time job about almost a year ago, every single engineer at the company had like the like most advanced version of ChatGPT open all the time and was like doing tons of research using that. There are like IDEs nowadays that are like coding environments that have AI plugins that will actually suggest code. You can accept it, you can reject it, you can like push back a little bit, you can get better ideas. So honestly, and even companies like Netflix have like licensed internal AI tools, like in like their own version of ChatGPT essentially. That's like private for their company that all the engineers and data scientists and data analysts are all using. Yeah. So all it is that all of us are like essentially just much more productive nowadays. Because we're like, essentially we're just like more powerful engineers with AI tools. Of course, maybe like there'll be like quote unquote less entry level jobs, but I have a sense that things are just going to change, right? I don't see AI. I think there's the argument that people are like, oh, AI is fundamentally different from anything else that's happened. Like there's all of technology and then AI is something else entirely. But I have a sense that that's not actually true. Sure, maybe change is happening faster, but back in the day, let's go like 1,000 years ago, most people were farmers. Like 70-80% of people are farmers, and then now that technology has come, they're like more knowledge work jobs. People are doing more things that they enjoy, and like 2% of society's farmers. That doesn't mean that no one has jobs and everyone's on the street, right? So I have a sense that AI will actually take up a lot of those like tedious stuff that people don't actually like to do too much, and empower knowledge workers to do like more high level stuff and be more creative. In fact,
yeah, I love that. I definitely have been trying to leverage AI myself more because, previously, I think in general, I'm kind of like a boomer in the sense that I don't want to start using new technology or like there's a learning curve. But then I realized there's definitely a value where the long-term benefits greatly outweigh like the upfront work. And so I started using ChatGPT to like just help me solidify like a brain dump of information, for example, and then like kind of organize it. Or like if I can't think of a word, then I'll like just again brain dump and then they can think of what it is, because that happens a lot, and I just feel like with the entry level jobs, I think that to have a like senior level job, like you have to start from an entry level job, so it's not going to disappear. And one more thing, I think that your comment about making things easier is really important, because we'll talk about students and studying later, but right now there's kind of an allergic reaction to whenever someone shares like some kind of tool using AI, like, oh no, AI again. But we have to realize that's something that enhances our lives, that it's not going to replace our brain, and it's all about how we use it. Like as a student, you still need to learn the knowledge and get common sense of like, how our biology works or how the real world works. But AI is just a way for you to maybe get the information faster and to do the tedious work faster.
Yeah, definitely. I think by the way, I also use ChatGPT all the time. Like if you look at my phone, it's like my screen time is not Instagram, it's ChatGPT nowadays. So I'm on there like I'm not scrolling it. Yeah, it's like a lot of time I spend is on ChatGPT. So yeah, it's so useful. I love like their voice features. So, like you can just talk directly into it, and its voice transcription is really good.
Yeah.
So one thing I love about it is the fact that it is so specific towards what you ask it. So like let's say, like you said, let's say you're thinking about the word I can't think of a word. let's say, okay, for example, let's say you forgot the word temperature, okay? And you're like, oh, what is that word? That's, how hot or cold I feel. You can just like dictate that in ChatGPT and say, tell me what word that is. Boom, it's temperature.
Yeah, exactly. I love that so much because often the people around me, they don't know what I'm talking about, but ChatGPT is like, it's like my best friend.
Yeah. No, I literally have a running joke with one of my friends that like my two besties are this person and then ChatGPT. And like sometimes she'll be giving me advice and I'll also ask ChatGPT, and like when they're in alignment, it's like
yeah,
it's really funny. But yeah, I think there is a bit of an allergic reaction towards AI, but I think we have to be like, for example, if we kind of go back to what people would study in the like 50s and 60s or the 1950s and 1960s, there is some stuff that is no longer necessary for people to learn because of technology. I think a great example is cursive. Some people love the art of cursive, and that's more of a calligraphy thing. It's more for fun. But back in the day, and I don't know, did you learn cursive in school?
Yeah, I did. I had a certain pride for like writing very pretty in cursive.
Yeah, so I also learned cursive. But pretty soon, I don't think they teach cursive anymore, is my guess. So maybe some schools, but I don't think it's a skill that's really necessary anymore. I think what's more important is typing speed, right? And maybe that will go. And in 50 years, maybe it'll just be like dictation software, or like no typing anymore, or just brain. Exactly.
Neuralink.
So yeah, exactly. So it's like I think things change over time, and we need to be aware that just because we did one thing back in the day doesn't mean it's necessary for the younger generation to do. I'm not saying that like everything is done. I think like basic skills like math, history, science, and reading, that stuff is useful, and it probably will be useful for the next 100+ years. But there are lots of small things, like I think cursive is a great example that I don't think kids need to learn cursive nowadays. Maybe if they want to, that's like a different thing. It's more of like an art for fun thing. But I think typing speed currently is more important as a skill. And I think that applies widely, not just in one area.
Yeah, I agree, because if you think about it, when we type, it makes us able to search what we wrote before. You can't do that on paper. And so to, again, increase convenience and efficiency, these are skills we need to leverage and technology we need to understand,
Definitely. Yeah, like, honestly, do you have like a fast typing speed?
I think I do. I think when I was in elementary school doing like the typing games, I would like get high scores, and I'm like,
yeah. I feel like it's so useful to have like a relatively fast typing speed. Like, I think mine is also, I don't know if it's like world class or anything, but it's like probably above average. And it really helps me. Like, my day-to-day life, literally all I do is on the computer, right? I'm writing scripts, I'm communicating with my team, I'm like online doing stuff. So yeah, I think typing speed is important, and it's important to like recognize what the next level skills are.
Yeah, exactly. And your typing speed is fast, but it's more of like a technical skill that like someone else could do for you. So by you making it faster, just like ChatGPT makes some things faster, is a great way to use it. Whereas your communication skills, those soft skills, are still irreplaceable. So I think maybe there will be more value placed on the soft skills in the future.
Yeah, definitely. I think as these things go on farther, I honestly think like business might just be like way more interpersonal nowadays, right? Because it's like if AI is doing a lot of the work, maybe the skill of business is less just sitting there and doing like the actual work itself, but more it's about like selling and like discussing and networking and meeting new people and convincing them why you're the right person for the job. So I think there's a perception amongst a lot of students that soft skills don't matter at all. And even that phrase, like hard versus soft skills, the idea that there's a difference between hard skills and soft skills, and they're in two separate categories, I just see them as skills, right? I think even in like an interview context, as someone who has worked, and you've also worked a full-time job, I think there's a lot of people don't realize, like people kind of rail against, oh, like, dude, soft skills don't matter at all. Who gives a shit? Like, just learn this language. Like, if you can just do this, if you just have those quote unquote technical skills, it's good enough. But honestly, it's like, I think people, literally in a specific example, let's say someone is 80% good at quote unquote whatever technical skills are, and someone else is 85% good at those technical skills. But the first person has like way better communication, is a pleasure to be around in the office, is fun to talk to, communicates well with the manager, with the team. The first person will probably get hired, even if they're slightly worse at quote unquote technical skills, just because they're a joy to be around. So I don't even like to make some kind of like distinction between soft and hard skills. I just see them as skills, and they're all important.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think when you have good soft skills, which includes your ability to be organized or like resilient and to emotionally self-regulate, in fact, that's going to accelerate your ability to learn technical skills, especially if you can get like a mentor or like you just learn certain tricks that you otherwise wouldn't have if you hadn't asked that one extra question. And at the same time, you'll be able to increase your soft skills even more, because when you talk to more people, you're naturally going to improve there. And so I think that's super valuable, where, you know, we're kind of using soft skills all the time more. And then like I'm going to business school. My fiance's in business school. And what's funny is that you realize in the corporate world, soft skills matter more than the technical skills sometimes, where like there was this movie where there's this Asian dad, which I empathize with a lot, that he was super good at his job engineering. Someone else was like maybe half as good, but he got promoted because he was buddy with his boss and could chat football and all that stuff. So this lesser skilled employee, was just top of mind. And top of mind is super important when, you know, you're dealing with like promotions, or like your boss is super busy, or just any kind of opportunity.
Yeah, everything, honestly. And whether you think it's a good thing or not, I think people are like, hear that story and feel sad, right? For the person who didn't get promoted, even though they were technically better. I think we have to all just accept that even though it's not ideal, it is still our responsibility to accept that this is the world we live in. And even in the world of like business and sales and marketing, right? Oftentimes people will just go with, like, let's say they're picking between two services, and service A on paper looks like, I don't know, they do this, and this, and this. But then service B, like the person's like, sounds really nice, is fun to talk to, is friendly. Most people, it makes you feel comfortable. Most people would actually go with service B. So yeah, I think people really undervalue those like abstract skills of learning, of efficiency, of being able to focus, of being able to be resilient. And communicate well with other people, and kind of overvalue those just purely hard technical skills.
Yeah, for sure. So taking a break from jobs and like software engineering, that kind of world. So you also made study videos previously. So I want to hear, first of all, like why you decided to make study content to start, like in your the early part of your YouTube journey. And also, what kind of soft skills in particular are helpful for students? Because I watched this video of yours helping like computer science students get A's. And then you talked about something about like infinite skills or something, some term like that, where you were saying like this is something you can continually build.
Yeah, maybe that was a while ago.
Okay.
I don't necessarily remember the exact terminology I used.
Oh, okay. Maybe I forgot the term too.
But yeah, so originally I started, actually my first video is why a MacBook Pro is good for computer science, and the second one is how to take notes for computer science. So pretty early on, I started as like kind of like a computer science study YouTuber. And I don't think there was really anyone else who was in that niche. I was kind of like, and one of my most viral videos actually is how I use Notion for computer science. So I definitely was kind of like in that intersection of note-taking, of active recall, Feynman technique, kind of like study tube stuff, but kind of applied into like a much smaller niche of just computer science and productivity. So honestly, originally I started just because I discovered Ali Abdaal's content, I think 4 or 5 years ago, and he actually inspired me to start my channel in the first place. So I watched his videos, found them super cool, found his ideas really interesting. Even before that point, I just never even heard of like, oh, like you can learn to learn. Like that concept was never even top of mind. No one told me that. Like my parents would be like, oh, you should be like more efficient, but no one even explained it in a logical manner, which is like, you can like learn these high level principles to be more productive, be more effective, actually implement them, and then you can like get A's the cool way, right? Instead of just grinding yourself into the ground. So I saw his videos, like really dove into that content, watched all of his stuff. Then I started to find other people like Thomas Frank is like another study. Back in the day, especially used to make like study content for college students and high schoolers. Really dove into that. So what I thought was, hey, I can learn this stuff, I can implement it, but then I can also apply it into the niche of just computer science, because that was something I just didn't see on YouTube at the time. So I made a video like how to take notes for computer science. It was essentially like knowledge I'd picked up from other people like Ali Abdaal, Thomas Frank, and like a couple books. But it was just applied for computer science. So I would like show my computer science notes, show like how I was like writing questions for myself, how I would quiz myself to actually learn that better. So I found that super helpful. It really helped me understand like how to be more effective, such that I could spend, less time and actually get more out of it, which really helped when it came to everything in life. So that's why I started making study content when it came to computer science.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's the prime way to make new content that's taking inspiration from other people. And since you made it specific to computer science students, that's filling a even greater need, or like more niche need. So it's like turning something that was already useful and not just like copying it, but making it even more useful to a particular group of people.
Yeah, definitely. I think this is something that's maybe it's talked about, but I feel like this is like almost one of the secret powers of just content, right? Is learning that you can combine like different areas, like a style, a format, but apply it to yourself. And that can be a whole new niche, right? Like for you, for example, I'm sure you'd saw like day in the life of a Vanderbilt student, day in the life of a Harvard student. But then you were like, oh, no one actually did that for Caltech. Let me actually vlog being a Caltech student. That's what started your channel, right? Mm-hmm. So I find that so interesting, inspirational. I think if anybody here wants to start doing content, whether it's YouTube, Instagram, no longer TikTok, in any different platform, instead of just like copying what someone else is doing, like just instead of remaking the same video, which inevitably is not going to work long term. Like maybe your initial video might do well, but if you copy someone else, there's a reason they did well. It's because they found that original combination and niche, and it's special to them and unique to them. So if you kind of rotely copy that, there's no reason why anybody would watch you over the other person, right? Like, let's say I don't know, randomly start copying some reaction YouTubers videos or something. Or like, let's say I try to copy Mr. Beast and I'm like, I gave $1,000 to a homeless person. Okay, right? Who's going to watch me over Mr. Beast? Who like, that is his niche, right? And it doesn't make any sense. So if you can think about 3 or 4 or even 5 different YouTuber styles, formats that you really like, and then think about what is special about me, what is different about me, can I combine them together? Like I see this, like so many successful YouTubers are like that, where it's like, for example, I don't know, have you seen Magnus Midbo, the rock climbing YouTuber?
No.
So he's like the biggest rock climbing YouTuber on the platform. Anybody who's interested in climbing will probably know his name.
Mm-hmm.
But he essentially took like challenge videos, but just incorporated rock climbing.
Oh,
and
that's
his
smart.
in his background, he was like a pro rock climber from Norway. So like he's like obviously extremely talented just in general. And he would do like, I tried this crazy wall at this place, or I tried cave climbing, which is like you're climbing in a cave over the ocean. If you fall into the ocean. Or I tried free soloing with Alex Honnold. Have you heard of like Alex Honnold?
Sorry, no.
So Alex Honnold, some people might know him. He did this documentary called Free Solo, which is where you climb without ropes. So if you fall, you die.
That's so scary.
Yeah, it was insane. And they actually studied his brain. Apparently his amygdala is like less powerful, so he doesn't feel as much fear, which is like, whoa, right?
Okay, I'm glad there's a scientific reason.
Yeah. I think it's half scientific, half this guy's like crazy. But yeah, so like he made a video like I tried free soloing with Alex Honnold, and like the thumbnail is him like hanging over some like nothing with ropes, right? With no ropes. So this guy, he's like at a climbing background, and then he combined like almost like the Mr. Beast fitness challenge things, but just for rock climbing. And his channel is blown up. He has like, I think he has over 2 million subscribers now, or 1 to 2 million subscribers. He has like a whole brand. He sells like rock climbing merch, chalk, shoes, like t-shirts, stuff like that. He collabs with like other fitness YouTubers. So that's an example of like this guy had a pro climbing background. He was able to take kind of like a format, which is challenge videos, collaborations, apply them together, and amazingly 2 million subscribers right there.
Oh. That's so intriguing, because you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of when high school students apply to college and they have to make a spike. And so one of the pieces of advice is you combine 2 of your strengths to make that a unique spike. And so you're saying it's like for YouTube too.
I think, yeah, honestly, I think it's like, for example, if you try to be the best in the world at just one thing, it's almost impossible, right? Like let's say I want to be top 0.1% at basketball. Good luck. I'm like going against like the NBA, right? At that point, and like people who have been playing basketball their entire life and are also like 6'8". Mm-hmm. But if I'm like, okay, I want to be the world's best basketball YouTuber. Okay, sure. Now I'm competing with like probably 5-10 other people, but it's like now it's much less competition because I'm like doing YouTube and basketball. And in fact, I could like, let's say I'm a top 10% basketball player and a top 10% YouTuber. That could be a successful career, right? So And like, let's say you incorporate a third thing, which is like commentary. So I'm like a basketball commentary YouTuber. There we go. That's a career.
Yeah.
That's even easier. So the more niche and unique and authentic and original you can be by combining like all these different areas into one new thing, the easier it is to actually stand out and do something great. Right. So for me, for example, what are some of my influences? One, I think my style on YouTube is kind of like a little bit like not harsh, but kind of like giving like the truth. The authentic truth that I believe, even if my audiences want to hear it. So like, for example, I made a video about like why I think the market actually isn't that bad, and people are just kind of using that as an excuse, and everybody tore me apart. They're like, no, Aman, the market's bad. This is why I can't do this because the market's bad. It's not my fault. People don't like to hear that, but I was like, whatever, like this is what I believe. I have the experience to show it. It's like I've helped these people who like couldn't get jobs and they fixed these things and they did now. So I like that harsh style and just authenticity there. I also am like commenting on advice for software engineering and getting jobs in tech, but also I like to incorporate like philosophy and productivity and history into that as well. So like I will give examples from, I don't know, like figures like Mark Zuckerberg and stuff like that, like stuff that they use or those high level philosophical principles, and incorporate that into that as well. So I feel like that's kind of my niche right now, is those three things. And as soon as I started to discover that more, that was when my channel started to do better. Rather than like before when even though I was kind of like doing something unique, which was study content, productivity with computer science, it wasn't unique enough to really stand out until I kind of found that like sweet spot of what I like to do and kind of like went with that.
Yeah, I think it just comes back to being a unique human, honestly, because, you know, I feel like many people are discouraged to create a YouTube channel because they're not going to be naturally funny like Emma Chamberlain or Casey Neistat and be so good at storytelling. But maybe we can actually have some kind of advantage by simply being human and mediocre at multiple things. So I would say I am mediocre at many things like basketball, singing, whatever, right? But at least I have a certain direction or theme, which is like, you know, studying and like having like living a great life, self-growth. And so then when I incorporate those other interests or like skills that then maybe other self-growth creators don't have, then that's where I can connect more with my audience who might also like basketball and also like singing.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with that. Actually, kind of on a different note here, this brought to mind, I know this guy who's like a Minecraft historian YouTuber. I don't know if you've seen his stuff.
No, I've
but
not.
Essentially it's like he'll like every 2 months he makes a 1 hour Minecraft documentary. And it's like this like really well edited historical masterpiece of like some crazy thing of Minecraft from like 2008 or something, right? And like I played Minecraft back in the day like a lot of people. So that idea is like, this guy's probably not like amazing at like whatever, like the game of Minecraft. He's also probably not the world's best historian. He's probably not the world's best documentary filmmaker either, or narrator or storyteller. But now when you combine all those things, there was a need, which is people who are like interested in gaming content, interested in history, interested in 1 to 2 hour long videos every couple months. He has like, he might even have over 1 million subscribers at this point, but like several 100,000 subscribers and a career off of it. So it's like, if you can take those things about you personally that you like, that kind of distinguish you from other people, you don't have to be world class at anything, right? Like, I'll be the first to say I am not a world class software engineer. I am not a world class speaker. I'm not a world class writer. I'm not a world class filmmaker. I'm not a world class coach. I'm not world class at anything. Like, I'm not like 0.001% at really anything in my life. But I was able to create a successful platform and career at this point off of like being relatively decent at 3 or 4 different things and putting them together.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think this gives a lot of hope for people listening out there who, you know, whether it's a student or a young professional or someone who wants to start a channel or business, you don't have to be amazing to do it. In fact, like you said, just combine some areas and you have to share your voice, your unique voice. And what I always say, especially for YouTube, is like, why do you want to make this content? Why does it have to exist? And why do you have to be the one to make it exist? If you can answer that, then that's your edge. And that's exactly how you stand out and quote unquote create your own niche. Like people say, like you still have to be in some area, like for example, computer science or like studying that people inherently care about. But once they find you, they're like, oh, I like this person specifically. And I'm going to keep watching them just because they're them.
Definitely. Yeah, I really like that principle. I think I watched one of your podcasts where you kind of talk about that. It's like, why does this need to exist and why am I the one who needs to do it? That right there, if you can just answer those 2 questions, immediately you're just ahead. And I would say just answer those two, and then pump out enough content over a longer period enough time where the audience finds you, and then you're going to be good. So yeah, honestly, if I just realized, like, I guess, like, in the beginning, why am I the one who has to make these videos? I might have, like, incorporated more personality elements early on. But even, like, it's like, it is so true. So yeah, I totally agree. Authenticity, being original, and trying to, like, be more about, or focus more on what you uniquely have, what kind of combination, because everybody's different, right? Everybody has their unique style and set of characteristics that they vibe with. But even on that point, it's like, if you lean into your authenticity and uniqueness, you can often find your tribe too. Like, I'll give you an example here. There are software engineering and CS YouTubers who are way bigger than me. But I've, like, talked to people who have, like, applied to join my program. They're like, I actually love your content, even though it's smaller. And I'm like, why? And they're like, I love how you're just, like, no nonsense. You just, like, tell me how it is. Like, it feels bad, but I like you tell me the truth. You know? So yeah, it's just, oh, whoa. Like, you prefer that style because it, like, resonates with you directly. So yeah, like, honestly, just by leaning into those, like, things that make you different. Obviously, like, quality is important. We can talk about that as well. But just by kind of, like, carving out your own niche, that's, like, the fastest way to be successful.
Yeah. What you realize is that the world is so huge, and there will definitely be people who are meant to, you know, be your friend, but they just live in a different country, or they're even a different age, just completely different demographic where you wouldn't have met them otherwise. And the purpose of YouTube, and I think the beautiful thing about the internet, is to bring those people together and to feel that sense of community, that, like, I'm heard and I'm not alone. And I feel like that's also why my content stood out, even though the study niche was, like, saturated, right? But I think people were just needing to hear my voice, and no matter how saturated something is, if people need your voice and they want to resonate with someone like them, then you're going to still be able to build an audience.
Definitely. Like, even with your background, right? I think we talked about this on our podcast yesterday, but you had seen these study YouTubers and you were like, oh, these are doing well. But you felt like, hey, I actually have a different angle on this. And you're kind of pissed off too.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, like, I see this and I didn't actually use any of this, and I want to give my own voice and my own background. And obviously you had, like, the expert and the authenticity and, like, the ethos to actually, like, hey, I was able to achieve great things. Now I'm here providing my different take, and it definitely worked. So I would say, yeah, like, no matter who you are, what you're interested in, there are people out there who are also interested in that. I think that's the beauty of the internet, right? Like, it's like, let's say I was trying to build my business with only people in my hometown. Okay, we've got, like, 20 people max who are doing, like, computer science and software engineering that I can get in contact with. But now I have, like, I can reach tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of people nationally, internationally, and grow off of that. So yeah, whatever you're interested in, there are people who are also interested in that as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think when it comes to being a person that simply exists in the world too, it's important to think of your authenticity, since especially with girls and, like, social media. So there's, like, you know, the clean girl aesthetic, or, like, cottagecore. I don't even know all of them, but there's this selling of the rebrand right now, especially with the new year 2025, that they're like, oh, this is how you rebrand yourself. But a lot of the videos are promoting only a certain aesthetic. And so ironically, people will start to lose their individualism because they're like, oh, I need to buy these sunglasses to be the cool girl, to be whatever it is. So that actually will also ironically make you feel even less self-esteem. But if you just lean into, like, your unique areas instead of, like, trying to find external validation, especially on social media, then you will be happier and just honestly find the right friends and people to vibe with, even in your immediate community.
Yeah, definitely. Totally agree with that. I think there's a bit of a pressure to kind of, like, conform to some kind of image. I feel this all the time. I'm like, oh, like, this person's dressed super well. They, like, look like this, like, cool European style. I was like, I should dress more like that. And then I go, and for about 30 seconds, I'm, like, looking at, like, I don't know, Instagram briefly about, like, oh, what is some, like, fashion thing? And then within 3 minutes, I'm like, I don't care about this at all. To be completely honest, I've never really cared about fashion or clothing. And, like, I feel this pressure to be like, oh, I should, like, dress more trendy, and that I'm a creator. I should, like, dress up. I should have, like, all this, like, expensive, cool looking, luxurious clothing. But, like, that's just, like, not what I'm interested in inherently. I don't care about spending money in that area. I care about other things intrinsically. So anytime I go, like, kind of, like, away from what my soul tells me to do, just to, like, conform to what I think I should do, first of all, it's a waste of time and a waste of money, right? And it's not going to bring me anything because, like, who am I trying to impress, right? The people who I actually want to be friends with and who actually care about me are not going to give a shit, like, if I'm wearing some kind of, like, $1,000 coat, right? They're going to care for me because of my personality and, like, you know, what I bring to the table in terms of, like, my characteristics and personality and soul, right? They're not going to care about, like, how expensive is that jacket, you know? So it's, I think, like, trying to, like, separate why do I want what I want. I think it's something that people don't do a lot. Recently I've been reading about mimetic desire. I don't know if you've, like, gone down that rabbit hole. Well, so the idea of mimesis, I don't know if it's, like, a Greek term originally, but the idea is it actually comes from a similar word as mime. It's like, you know, like mimes, they'll, like, copy stuff like that on the street.
I thought so when I heard it.
Yeah. So the idea is copying other people, and mimetic desire is imitating someone else's desire. So if you look at yourself, right? Let's say you're in high school or you're in middle school and you're sitting at the cool kids table, and all of a sudden all these cool kids whip out their shiny Pokemon cards, right? All of a sudden you'll probably find yourself thinking maybe 1 or 2 weeks later, oh, I should get some Pokemon cards and show them off to these guys, right? And why is that the case? Maybe you never even cared about that, but all of a sudden, as soon as other people want, like, cooler and cooler and rare Pokemon cards, so do you. This kind of applies to so many different areas, right? Like, we were actually talking about this I guess I wasn't part of this conversation, but I was hearing a lot of you guys who are in business school have been talking about this when it comes to recruiting, right? One of my friends, Nate, and then I think you were mentioning as well, like, there's a sense that when you're in business school, you need to be recruiting for these top firms at all times. And if everybody else is kind of, like, recruiting for it, it's like, wait, why don't I want that either? Maybe I should go for it too. And I've seen this, like, in so many different areas. I think, like, for example, in the world of YouTube, right? I have this, like, intrinsic sense, which is like, oh, I need to, like, be invited to all these events and stuff because all these cool people are being invited.
Yeah.
Which is like this, like,
yeah, you feel FOMO all the
yeah,
time.
yeah.
It's
I'm like,
natural.
oh my god, like, all these people are posting on Instagram. They keep getting all these invites. Oh, I need to grow my channel and get those invites and get connected to those brands. But I'm like, why do I want that? Like, do I really think that it's gonna, like, change my life to be invited to, like, a couple of these events? I think it's cool to meet people, but also I can just meet cool people just, like, organically, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to be invited to some, like, crazy event and, like, dress up just to meet people. And it's good to go to that, like, if you intrinsically care about it, but you should often question, like, why do I want what I want? Is it something that I intrinsically wanted from a young age for myself? Or am I seeing other people who are, like, playing that game and I feel like I have to actually conform to that and go for that as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some kind of phrase that I like recently is live with a why. And that goes for anything. So it's whether it's your desires or you're currently on your phone or in bed or watching Netflix. Why are you doing that? Is there just simply not anything better to do? Well, why isn't there anything better to do? Or, like, why do you feel the need to go to that party even though you actually wouldn't like going, you know? That kind of thing. It's like you always have to question yourself. And that's why I think with consuming more content, it's this self-propagating in the negative spiral direction. Like, the more you're on content, the less you think about your why. But the content consumption is something that you need to think why about the most, because it's literally taking up so many hours of people's time. And at the same time, influencing what you feel like you need. Like, you need that new luxury bag or fashion, as you just said, or you need to go to that event. So it's so important to question.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's like people, I don't know if you mentioned this as well. I think Hormozy, maybe it's not Hormozy, but he has a quote which is like, if you can't actually tell me why you have a certain belief, it's not your belief.
Yeah, no, it's Hormozy. It's
yeah,
always
yeah.
Hormozy.
It's always Hormozy.
Yeah, he has great quotes.
yeah. It's like, if you have a belief and you can't actually explain to me what influenced you to have that belief and why you believe it, spoiler alert, it's not your belief.
Yeah. No, honestly, I hope so. You know how a lot of, like, the huge successful, like, creators or, like, entrepreneurs, like, especially men, eventually something, like, bad, like, gets exposed about them.
Yeah.
I really hope Hormozy is clean, because, like, he seems like a great guy, but I've quoted him way too much at this point.
Oh my god. Yeah. If something comes out, me too, I'm done for. Yeah, definitely. I have, like, a bit of a risk, or not a risk, but I'm like, I have a fear that anybody I look up to will actually just, like, be evil on the inside, because I'm like, so many people have, like, a downfall, especially, like, YouTubers and stuff like that. But I hope he's good. I hope he's clean. I hope he stays clean.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, speaking from personal experience, creators online are not always what they are in real life. So
yeah,
gotta be careful.
I learned. I feel like I picked that up over the past 1 or 2 years, which is like, and even me personally, I think you do a good job of being, like, very authentic. I am authentic, but I'm not the same person as I am online. And like, just speaking of like meeting creators and stuff IRL, like some of them are like very similar to what their perception is online, but some of them are not. And like, I've spoken to other people about other creators, and they're like, yeah, that person's actually not what they are online. Like they're a bit different in person. So yeah, I hope he's clean. I hope he's what I think he is based on what I've seen so far, because I really enjoy his content.
Yeah, he's a hero I'd like to meet sometime.
Yeah, honestly, I think it's like a good goal. I feel like my goal is to also like meet him at some point, because it's like, yeah, I'm sure he'll be like way more jacked in person too. Like he's like really jacked, but I'm sure like seeing him in person is be like, whoa, yeah, this guy's like huge.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, wow, we went off a really exciting but big tangent there from hearing your story of how you started on StudyTube. Do you have anything to add to your creator journey, or do you want to answer the part about like the soft skills you think are important for students and go into like the study area?
Definitely. My creator journey. Yeah, it's been tumultuous. I would say like it's like a very up and down thing. Over the past year, it's almost been like exponential growth. Like 14 months ago, I'd never made a single dollar online. And like now I like run this business and I'm like making more than my full-time job, which is crazy to me. Yeah, it's like, whoa, like in 14 months, you can go from 0 to that. And in hindsight, like obviously I'd been doing the groundwork. Like I'd been posting for 3 years and stuff before I kind of took it seriously and started to try to monetize. But it is still insane to me that like within 14 months, one can go from like 0 to like a really good income, a full-time income, in fact. So that's really inspirational. In terms of like just advice for creators, if anybody wants to do this professionally, because it is the most common job, right? We went from like astronaut, doctor, engineer, and every kid wants nowadays, or most kids want to be creators nowadays.
Yeah.
I also don't feel like there is like YouTube advice, but I don't think there's like a great one resource for how to do it professionally. I don't know if you have like an opinion on this.
I think it's something where you cannot have a great one advice, because everyone's journey is different. And especially if you break it down by niche, there are so many niches. Then you break it down by people with unique voices and combinations of niches, like we said, it's going to be even more different. But I think similar to the kind of study advice I give, if you give more principles and deep like mindsets or like approaches, then that can be more applicable to a wider range of people.
That's a really good point. Yeah, because like advice, so back in the day, and this was like probably 2 years ago, Mr. Beast video clips would always go viral, right? It's like Mr. Beast, like insane YouTube advice for 30 minutes. And I'd be watching these Mr. Beast advice compilations, taking notes like, oh my God, Mr. Beast said I need to like in the first 10 seconds reaffirm the viewer and do X, Y, and Z. It's like, okay, I'm taking notes on that. Mr. Beast said this, like this autoplay is really important. Mr. Beast said the title and thumbnail, and a lot of that advice is correct. But Mr. Beast is not making educational content. Mr. Beast is not helping students achieve their goals. Mr. Beast is entertaining the world. He's entertaining billions of people, right? That is not what I'm doing. So often it's like the yin and yang, right? It's important to take a step back. Instead of just copying the actions of what someone says, understand the mindset that actually influenced them to come up with those recommendations, right? Like for Mr. Beast, let's say he says every single title or every single thumbnail should have your face super blown up, and it should be like super edited. Surprised. Yeah, super surprised. Like mouth open, eyes wide. Okay, like why is he saying that? Well, he's saying that because title and thumbnail are important, but also his audience is like young people, and they're not like as discerning, right? They just want to see his face blown up because they need to like click on that video, right? Who's my audience? They're actually like older. They're mid-20s or even 30s. People who are in software engineering and tech. Do those people really want to see my face blown up in the thumbnail with like hyper edited and some crazy expression? Probably not. So if you kind of go back to first principles and stop just copying some advice that someone says and actually think about why are they saying that? What is Mr. Beast's mindset behind that? What he's really saying is think about who you're speaking to and appeal to them in terms of the thumbnail. So if you just copy what he says, what he does, which is like make some crazy expression, it's not going to work. But instead, if you think about why is he saying what he's saying and come up with your own answer, that's like a way better piece of advice here.
Yeah, for sure. But that's really hard for most people to do, I think. And many people don't say that because you know what sells well in videos? It's XYZ tips that immediately sound actionable. Yeah. And it's the same thing across all niches, right? Like study tips. You hear, make flashcards. When people hear that advice, they can visualize themselves making flashcards. And so they get a dopamine boost. And so they will watch through that video, get the next tip, continue, increase that watch time, and then watch another one. But what doesn't sell is like if you say something a little too deep and they're like, you know, it doesn't give that same
Boring.
dopamine boost. Yeah, like so.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's hard, right? It's like if you imagine a tree, kind of like at the top, these are more like the first principles, and then you go deeper into the niches. That's like more specific advice, like the thumbnail. You go even deeper, you can be like, oh, entertainment creators specifically do this, right? And so people really want the later branches of the tree, the very specific advice, but that's not what's most helpful oftentimes.
Yeah, it's a problem. I think the issue is kind of what you said. Like, what sells is not necessarily what's best, right? What sells on YouTube is 7 productivity tips to make $10,000 a month online, right?
That's a perfect title.
Yeah, it's like, how students can make $10,000 a month passively. Lazy approach. Like the million views right there.
Yeah, parentheses, no BS.
Yeah, parentheses, no BS, honest advice, lazy, I'm lazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that stuff's like immediate views, immediate attention. People just like 8 tips.
Oh,
are we good?
Sorry. Yeah, it's okay.
Okay.
I got you excited.
Yeah. 8 tips, this thing, like 1 minute on each tip, hyper edited. That's going to get views. But is that actually going to change someone's life? Maybe, maybe not. What actually would work is some kind of like deep mindset thing, which is like, let's say the coach and the cheerleader, like a 30-minute deep dive into like so many different examples, the original idea behind it, how you can apply it. But who's going to click on that as much, right?
Yeah.
So it is kind of sad.
It does sound sad. But on the bright side, it's like things kind of work out fairly in a sense where like then I assume like your audience and my audience are probably more likely going to be successful because they can resonate with those principles that then they can apply to other parts of their lives and be successful there, you know? So I think, you know, that they might be older, they might be more mature, more philosophical. And if advice resonates, how I think of it is that they already kind of felt that subconsciously, but it never came to the surface. And only when you say it, they're like, "Ooh, I like that," because I already kind of thought that myself.
Yeah, definitely. Another way I like to think about this is the packaging doesn't have to be the video, right? So if I can like bring them in with like the blank productivity tip, some crazy title, but then the actual video itself can be like more philosophical, more deep, can be more structured, can have more nuance and like stuff like that, then that is like a nice middle ground where like it gets attention, it gets views. Because fundamentally, right, if you make a video and no one watches it, then it's not going to impact anyone, unfortunately. It can be the best video in the world, but like let's say you never publish it or just no one finds it, then you're fresh out of luck, right? But you kind of have to balance like the clickbaity quote unquote thing. Obviously, don't go too far. Don't like lie in your title and thumbnail. That's ridiculous. But if you can like take your idea and kind of like phrase it to be some kind of like messaging that resonates with people, and then the video can have tons of nuance. I think it's a good middle ground as well.
Yeah, that's what I realized worked with my first video that kind of blew up and gave my growth all the way to now, because I was talking about like deep things and stories, but the packaging was like, oh, how to get straight A's.
Exactly, right? And I think we were talking about this too. It's like you kind of have to lean into your branding almost, which some people are like, oh, I don't want to keep talking about this. Like, why do I keep repeating myself? If you watch any one of my intros, I almost always say, hi, my name's Aman. In college, I got 6 software engineering internship offers at companies like Amazon, Shopify, HP. And when I graduated, I landed multiple six-figure job offers. You would never say that to someone in person, right? That's not how you introduce yourself. You're not going to introduce yourself being like, hi, my name's Amy, and I got a 4.0 at Caltech.
Yeah, it's like, unfriended immediately.
Yeah, it's like, but on YouTube, you kind of have to do that.
Yeah.
Because like you need to, like for new viewers, they kind of need to know like why should I quote unquote pay attention to this person?
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
time is precious.
Exactly. It's like this limited content, so you kind of have to do that. But I guess changing topics or back to the soft skills thing. I don't know if you can like contribute to this as well in terms of like what soft skills you think are really important.
Yeah.
For me, I think the ability to do something that will probably fail, I think is really important. And for example, kind of like, or the ability to do something that like there's a good chance of failing, and 2, the ability to do something that most people would say that doesn't even matter. And for example, I'll kind of like take it to like how we met, right? I just have this habit of like reaching out to cool people and like setting up podcasts and hanging out with them.
Oh, thank you.
And yeah, and it's just like, for example, like even I met Ali Abdaal recently, like a couple weeks ago. We did like a podcast together.
Yeah.
I met him in Hong Kong.
Yeah,
which
that's
is like
dope.
Yeah, he was literally my hero, right? And how did that originally get set up? Well, 4 years ago, he launched this like podcast community when his podcast was like pretty small. It was like 20K subscribers or something. So there were probably 40 or 50 people who signed up, and it was only $10 a month to like get on a call with him and his brother and like talk to them every single week, which is like, whoa, like what an opportunity that is.
Yeah.
So I paid for that, and just literally just met them, chatted with them, and I was probably the most active student in like the group. So like I was like conversing with them a lot. I would actually bring interesting ideas to the conversation. I would listen to their podcast, take notes, and kind of like ask them questions about each like idea they brought up, and kind of like have a back and forth conversation about that and provide my own nuance there. And through that, like they actually got to know me. They were like, oh, this guy's really interesting. He's really cool. He's like 19 years old, but that's like awesome. And at the time, my brother also was interested in Ali Abdaal, but he was like, oh, it's a waste of time. Like, why do you even want to talk to them? Like, you're not going to get anything out of it anyway. Just like, just get good grades and move on, right? But I was like, no, like I intrinsically I enjoy it's like meeting interesting people. So I did that. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, about like 2 years later, I just like randomly cold DM'd Ali Abdaal when he was releasing his book and was like, hey, I have a YouTube channel. It's at like 40K subs right now. I would love to do a dedicated book review to try to boost your book on the New York Times bestseller list. Because for any author, for context for the viewer, their sales in the first week is what gets them on the New York Times bestseller list. So all of them are like blasting pre-orders, blasting podcasts, blasting videos to try to get those first week sales because they want to hit the New York Times bestseller list.
Wow.
And I just knew that. Like I knew that if someone is releasing a book, they want to get a lot of attention. So I just cold DM'd him. I cold DM'd his assistant because I just kind of like knew about them. And I was like, hey, I'll just make a dedicated video just to boost your sales. And he goes, sure. And he sends me an early copy. So I read it. He sends me like a nice handwritten note. I post a dedicated video the day the book comes out. It's like Ali Abdaal's book changed my life. It gets like 10 to 20K views, like a good view count for my video at the time. He like puts it on his story. He's like, oh, thank you, Aman. Like dedicated book review. First reviews are out. It's awesome. And that was that. So we had like another connection there. And then after that, I joined his like YouTuber Academy. So like he has like a really good course with his team, super helpful, learned a lot. Like his team helped me craft like a bunch of viral videos and grew my channel and business even more. And I like came face to face with him like every month or something like that. And that had a lot of success. And then finally a few months ago, I just like cold DM'd him on Instagram again, was like, hey, I'm visiting Hong Kong with my girlfriend, would love to like grab a coffee with you. And he was like, let's do it. Let's also do a podcast for my channel too. So I was like, holy shit.
Yeah, that's so kind of him, honestly.
Absolutely.
Like, because, you know, even going out to eat as a very busy guy is a lot, but then like doing a podcast and like just being so and valuing you as a person, you know, even though he's huge, I feel like it's very rare.
No, absolutely. Like, for context, I'm at like 60K subs. He's at 6 million. So like,
yeah, not that number should.
Yeah,
define
not that numbers
our
define
value.
us, but let's just give some example here, right? Like his just pure audience size is 100 times bigger than mine. Literally, I'm 1/100 the size of his channel. Yet he was like, let's do a podcast. And we ended up grabbing lunch twice. He paid for me both times. He bought me a gym day pass and bought me coffee twice.
Oh
So
my
I was
gosh.
like, dude, what?
Wow.
And I felt bad too. Like the second lunch, I was like, I need to pay for this. Like I was like, oh my God, like my parents would be so disappointed if I'm letting him pay for it. So I tried to go pay for it and he was like, didn't let me almost. He was like, no. And he just laughed and he just paid for it. I was like, this guy's legit.
I like him even more now.
Yeah, I'm like, because I had that fear as well. I was like, oh, what if he's like not how he is online? But he seemed to be like even better or even more wholesome IRL.
Gosh.
So I guess going back to my point here, like doing things that probably like wouldn't quote unquote work, which is like, why even reach out to a YouTuber like that? Or even why, like he's so big on paper. It's like, he's never going to listen to you. Like why even, so many people have thoughts like that in their head. And for context, I've done this with like a lot of other YouTubers that haven't actually worked out. Like they just didn't see my email or they just didn't respond. They just weren't interested. It's fine. Before coming here, I probably cold DM'd 10 people who are in New York City to like set up stuff with, and like a couple worked out and we had a great dinner last night with some of those people. And it was awesome. But just because someone didn't respond, it doesn't mean that it wasn't worth it, right? So I really, really value the soft skill of just like trying something, even if it probably wouldn't work out, and even if you can't like immediately like pinpoint the benefit of it, because the benefit often comes later on.
Oh, for sure. I love that advice. It's so crucial to just like living your best possible life, honestly, because if you think like, oh, you DM 100 people even, all you need is that one to work out and you're like, oh, thank goodness I tried, right? And it can lead to other things down the line, a new friendship, new opportunity. And it compounds too, right? Like maybe like Ali Abdaal, like his podcast, like you're on it, and then someone's like, oh, I want to learn more about computer science, and then they know about your channel, and so it's like you just help each other, and like it's like you can't think too much about the fear or like what if this doesn't work out, because what if it does, you know, wouldn't that be way worse than the fear of doing the thing?
Definitely. It's also like, what I don't think people really think about what is the actual harm here. Like, okay, for like I said, I'm a DM like 5-10 plus cold DM YouTubers on Instagram, and most of them didn't respond. But it's like, okay, so what? You know, like it doesn't actually harm me in any way, shape, or form. And a couple did, and that was amazing. Like I made new friends, I got to meet new people, and it was awesome, right? And even with like the Ali Abdaal thing, like there was a good chance like he probably wouldn't even like respond. He was too busy. Yet he did, and like we got a podcast together. And even if that doesn't like do anything on paper to my career, I feel like it does. But let's say it didn't. It is just so rewarding to meet someone like that in person. And it just like, it almost invigorated me. Like I remember when I left that hangout with him, I was like, I'm so like inspired right now. Like I sat down, I journaled about it. I like wrote everything I learned from him.
I can imagine.
He recommended like 3 or 4 books for like that I needed for my unique problems and situations. I immediately started reading them. I just felt this like invigoration for life and business.
Exactly.
And stuff like that.
Exactly.
So,
it's about being excited about life.
yeah.
And being like, people are good. Like I know there's a lot of sad things like happening every day, you know, like the news, but like once you get down to like just reaching out, making those connections, you're happier, and then you're like, oh, there are great people in the world, so I want to like help them, and I want to like make more connections and live my great life. Like who cares if, you know, some people might not answer, but that's them. That says nothing about me, but I'm gonna live my best life.
Definitely. I think this like probably applies to dating as well. Like some people are like, oh, like I think this person's attractive, or I have a crush on this person. What if they reject me? Oh no, like I can't go say what I feel. But like, what if that's your soulmate? You know what I mean? Like, what if you like say that to 5 or 10 people, like obviously in a normal way, let's caveat that, over like a 1-year period, and one of them is actually like the person you get married to. Like, you really want to risk that? Like, not meeting like the actual love of your life, your soulmate, just because you're afraid of like momentary rejection in that moment. And most people are nice. Most people are not gonna like roast you for like 10 minutes straight for being like, hey, do you want to like grab dinner, right? But the upside is so unlimited, which is like you could literally meet the person you spend your life with, you know?
For sure. There's a book that I would recommend. It's called Influence is Your Superpower. And in it, so it's written by a Yale MBA professor. So she talks about how it's very important to be okay with rejection and to almost do exercises on a day-to-day basis where you expect to be rejected. Like you go to a coffee shop and you're like, can I get this for free? And they say, and then they say no, and you're like, okay.
I love that. I've actually done that before. Have you tried that exercise?
I have not, because I feel like at this point when reading the book, I was already someone like willing to just like shoot my shot. But yeah.
Yeah. So this exercise is in a couple other books as well, which I love this exercise. You know, have you read $1 Million Weekend by Noah Kagan? That's another entrepreneurship book, but he also has this comfort challenge in there, which is like show up at a cafe, ask them for like a 10% discount. So I actually filmed myself doing that for my book review on this. So my brother was like recording me walking up to this person, and I walked up and I was like, can I get a latte? Okay, it's $4. Can I actually get 10% off? And they were like, why? And I was like, haha. Yeah. And he was like, sorry, can't do that. And I was like, okay. And it shows you there's literally no harm. Nothing is going to happen to you. But so many people are terrified of rejection and failure. And I don't think school does us any benefit here, because if we actually think about the grades model, right? If you, in school, to get an A, you have to get 93+% very often, right? Can you imagine? You have to get 90+% of things right to get a good grade or like an A, right? But in the real world, it's fine if you get 95% wrong and 5% right, because the 5% right pays for the 95% wrong. But people are in that school mindset, which is like, oh, like everything I do has to be 90+%. Otherwise, it's not even worth trying doing it. On YouTube, if you publish 9 videos and 1 goes viral, that's 10%. But that's enough. That makes a channel, right? If you expect 95% of your videos to work, then you will never even get started, because that's so unrealistic. So I often find that school and the real world are inverted in that way, and that causes a lot of issues. Because let's be real, school is a bit fake, right? Like school it's an institution that you're paying to like create this knowledge and learning and rules, and that's useful and valuable for a lot of people. But the real world is very inverted. In the real world, if you shoot like 95% of things are like don't fail, but 5% work, it works. So
that's so insightful. I've never heard of it thought that way. That's great. Yeah, maybe that's also why my advice works, because it's a little contrarian and I think about the real world, and so I talk about that to students and they're like, "Wait, what? I don't have to, think that school is my life when you actually got good grades, So, wow, that's a great way to think about it.
Yeah, I think school's a bubble, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's important. Again, like I don't want to make it seem like school is not important. I think it's extremely important. I think you should go for A's. You should try to do your best. But it is like even this example, right? People think that, oh, like I want this, like I have to like bend down for the school to accept me in. But you actually pay them.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're paying them. They work for you on technically, right? You can shop around and pick a school you want. Right? If a school's like pissing you off or annoying you, you can switch, and they should want to retain you. I think the Ivy Leagues and like really competitive schools, they're like marketing and branding experts.
They're a business.
They're a business.
Yeah.
Like Harvard, I think it's like a $50 billion endowment, right? Like
Yeah.
investment portfolio.
Yeah.
Nowadays,
Yeah.
they're literally a company that just like does school on the side.
Exactly. Like if they really cared about improving the world and like cultivating the best young leaders, their actions would not be how they are right now, because first of all, they would use their endowment to help, those poor neighborhoods that they so care about. And then second of all, there's a statistic. I think these Ivy Leagues like Yale, Harvard, it's like 70% of them go into consulting or investment banking. And it's like, wow, that's that brilliant kid who wrote about saving turtles when they're in high school.
That's a brilliant kid who like went on a mission trip to Haiti to like save the people, and I was working at McKinsey. Oh,
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like also the fact that they have a 4 to 5% acceptance rate. Like if their goal was to help as many people as possible and provide education to the world, they would not only take 4% of people, and they would not charge them $300,000 to get that education. Right? So yeah, I think people need to understand these schools are valuable. It is good to go to like a good school. I'm not saying it's bad. The professors are good. The community is good. You will learn a lot. It will like put you very far ahead. But don't think these places are out there as like these shining beacons of goodness in the world. They're a business. They purposefully keep their acceptance rate low, even if they could take more people. Like let's say Harvard one year is like, you know what? We could actually take 8%. Do you think they're going to take 8%? Hell no. They want it to be very competitive. They want to reject people because they want to keep up their reputation of being exclusive. There were actually done studies where they had kids who got into Harvard who chose to go to a state school because of like finances or family reasons. And they looked at their careers 20 years later and it made no difference towards someone who went to Harvard.
Yeah.
Why? Because the person was already good enough to get into Harvard. They just chose not to go. And the quality of the education is not that much better. So sure, like the people at Harvard are like whatever, like they're like super competitive, super bright and stuff like that. But the actual like physics knowledge at Harvard versus Georgia Tech or versus like a public school, like I don't know, but some other public school, right? It's not like the physics is different. It's not like the computer science ideas are different. Often those professors at those schools also went to Harvard too, right? So they're teaching the same knowledge. And if a kid is good enough to get into Harvard anyway, very often they're like just going to do well in life, no matter where they are.
Yeah.
So these employers often hire from these like competitive schools just because they have such a low acceptance rate that it's not about the education. It's the fact that they've already filtered down to like the most competitive kids.
Exactly. So yeah, it's hard, right? Because clout does matter to a certain extent, because, you look at a resume 2 seconds in, you're like, oh, okay, I will consider them more.
Yep.
Or like, just again, social media, because that's like so prevalent. You look at a glance at someone's bio. Oh, okay, I'm going to trust them more, right? So it does make a difference. It's very nuanced there, but it all comes back down to like the person you are. And if you are someone who can leverage your opportunities and resources at Harvard, you're going to be able to do it elsewhere.
Definitely. Yeah, I think people tend to over fixate on stuff like that, which is like, oh, if I just get into this school, my life is set. Like that kind of like destination focus, which is like, oh, the only thing that matters is that acceptance letter. Once I get into that, everything is taken care of.
Yeah.
And it's like almost like hijacking your brain, because like, let's say it doesn't happen. Then it's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or even if it does, like if you convince yourself that, and you can talk to anybody at Harvard, they will I feel like they will agree with this too. Like people who like got into these schools, or even like Caltech or stuff like that, right? Like I'm sure many of them brainwash themselves into thinking, oh, like this is the only thing that matters in my life. I have to like do all these activities just to get to this goal. And if you ask them, did your life end complete like serenity at the when you got that acceptance letter. Maybe they were happy for like a couple days, they were excited with their friends and family, but then they went to the school. It's like hard. Now they start grinding again, and now the goalpost shifts. Now it's like, oh, the only thing that matters in life is the internship I get this summer. If I just get this one big consulting or big tech, okay, we're good. Big tech internship, then my life is set. And then it becomes a return offer. If I get this one return offer, then I'm good. If I have a job on my resume, if I start working here, if I just get promoted next year, then my life is set. At what point is it like, okay, it's not about achieving some kind of like end result. It's about actually prioritizing the things that matter to you, which is like friendships, family, health, I don't know, like
the infinite,
meaning.
Yeah. The infinite goals.
Exactly.
Yeah. When you do experience failure, like on your YouTube journey, so there are many times when, you know, for everyone, you get like very few views for like the amount of work you have. So what kind of thinking got you through that? Were there any particular mindsets or actions that you could recommend to someone else also going through some feelings of like failure or struggle and just like not really seeing the light at the end of the tunnel?
Yeah, I think there were a couple things that helped me because inevitably, especially I feel like you're better than this at me. Like you get like really good consistent views. I don't. Like I will have one video that gets like 150K views, and I had a podcast that got like 1.5K views like 2 months ago. So it's very like up and down for me. I think things that have helped are taking a step back and realizing that no one video really matters that much. It's more about like the overall trajectory and the overall journey. Like, let's say I have 5 videos that tank and get like 2K views on them, and then I have one video that gets 100K views. That is still successful. Like that's a successful run right there because one worked out. So that's one thing I like to do. The second thing that really did help me, and this is probably not as relevant to people who aren't like full-time creators, is the business aspect of things. I was able to build like a business backend such that I don't rely on sponsors or AdSense at all. So, and you definitely know this. I did a bunch of sponsorships, and I talked to tons of creators like our mutual friend Han, who also relies on sponsorships. They're super stressful because if you get a bad video, then you're worried they're going to drop your rate.
Yeah. No, oh my gosh. I wish more viewers knew of the creator side of things. Because we talked about it, sorry interrupting you a little bit, but creating is such a weird job where it's the one job that most people feel like they understand fully, you know, whereas like, you know, a doctor, you may kind of have an understanding of like, oh, you have to go to school, whatever, but you don't really know like residency. Even a lot of people don't know that. But for creating, they're like, oh yeah, you get sponsorships, or like depends on views. Oh, you get AdSense, right? But then this creates some problems because unless you're a creator, there are certain things you just like cannot understand. And so there becomes this disconnect where your viewers will be like, oh, why are you taking the sponsorship? Or like, why are you doing this? And then you're like, but I'm trying my best here and blah, 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 right? And like sponsorships are so stressful. And then they actually end up having less empathy for you because they're like, oh, you're making so much money. Why are you so stressed? You know, or like your job and life is so good. And so, yeah, the sponsorship being stressful thing just like kind of reminded me of that. And I really wish that there was actually more of a close relationship between the viewer and the creator versus just like parasocial. Definitely.
Yeah, I think the parasocial relationship causes a lot of issues here where the viewer feels like they know the creator through and through. Like, I know every aspect of you. I know how you feel, and I know that you're taking this sponsorship when you shouldn't. When it's like, you don't know anything about this. You don't know, like, let's say, fortunately, I don't think either of us are in this situation, but let's say it's like, oh, I need revenue this month. Otherwise, I can't pay my bills. Okay, like, I kind of have to take that sponsorship because it's like, even if I don't, like, necessarily resonate with it, I have to, like, keep the lights on, right? And people will be like, oh, no, you shouldn't have done that. It's like, I had to, though. Yeah. Like, I guess, like, all there is there's, like, more, there is more to the story, essentially. You don't know someone's intentions. You don't know a creator. Like, maybe some creators you know better than others, but I don't think there's I would wager here that there's no creator that a viewer knows fully without meeting them in person, or even when you meet them, like, you're not them, so you don't know what they actually feel or what they think or what their intentions are, right? And often you see like a couple facts and you, like, the viewer makes up a story, which is like, oh, like, she should have said that, or she didn't say this, or he did that and he didn't do this, so this is why he's like clearly doing this. You kind of attribute attention when you haven't seen the full picture, you don't know the background, you don't know anything about them, but the viewer just does that. So I guess going back to the story about sponsorships here, a lot of YouTubers who are relied on AdSense and sponsorships, their salary is dependent essentially on the views. So let's say like a sponsor is going to pay a certain rate. For example, like this is just an example. I don't think any of us like have this specifically, but like so it's like a sponsor's going to pay $2,000 for a video, okay, and they expect it to get 50K views at least, and that video tanks and gets 10K views through no fault of your own. It could be a great video, it could be an amazing video, just something about the title and the thumbnail or something about the time you posted didn't work out. Now the sponsor doesn't get a return on their investment, and maybe they'll like pay for 2 or 3 more videos, but if that happens again, they're like, okay, maybe I should focus on another YouTuber, or we're going to drop your rate. Sorry, we're only going to pay you $1,000 now. Well, my rent is coming up next month. Like, what the hell am I supposed to do now? So I found that YouTubers who rely on sponsors tend to get really stressed out, because it's like, I need this video to do well because I use that money to eat, right? I don't know if you have anything to say about that.
No, I can attest to the stress because, you know, being someone who like came from an immigrant Asian household, there's some sense of stability that is always like ingrained in me that I want, and I just have to learn that that's not possible, especially if you rely on sponsorships. That like, even though I have some savings, well, my fiance is going to business school, which is really expensive, and so I am overthinking each video way more. Like, this has to perform because I genuinely love this sponsor and I don't want this sponsor to be disappointed, you know. And then at the same time juggling the overthinking of how does the viewer think about everything I'm saying, because I only have 15 minutes. I can't use 30 minutes in a YouTube video to explain every nuance, every caveat, address every person that this may not fit, you know. And so there's a lot of stress that does come with that.
Definitely.
And I didn't realize till like recently that this kind of builds and bubbles up over time, and I could understand why YouTubers quit, you know, because in the beginning I was like, oh, you know, this is great,
Dream job. Why would you quit?
I'm so passionate about everything I'm talking about, and then the viewers are liking it too. Dang, you know. But yeah, I think like some things you realize, you know, you can be contrarian in some aspects, but there's a reason why most people start feeling a certain way.
Definitely. Yeah, I had this perception that like once I'm a full-time YouTuber, all my problems will be taken care of, and like I will never feel stressed again, and I'll live this dream life where I'm just like doing whatever I want. And let's be real, I do prefer this over working a 9-to-5 job. Otherwise I wouldn't do it. But I think it's like a strong belief I have in kind of like what I mentioned earlier about like the acceptance letter or the job offer or the internship offer or the promotion. That one discrete moment is not going to fix everything in your life. Life is not about like this achievement after the next. Life is not about like, oh, if I just get this like subscriber count, or if I just get this revenue goal, everything is taken care of. I can finally rest. Because fundamentally, you are still you. Your mind is still there. I think a lot of people like to say, I have this perception that, oh, if I could just move to Thailand and have my laptop and like sip margaritas on the beach, my life would be perfect. But your mind comes with you. So if you struggle with stress, if you struggle with anxiety, like, or loneliness, oh well, too bad. It's with you.
Yeah.
It's not like you just leave those like problems behind. So yeah, I have found that it's like the perception that as long as I get this, everything will be taken care of is kind of like a mental hijacking. Your brain hijacks yourself to basically convince yourself of that to increase motivation, right? If you genuinely believe if I get this one outcome, my entire life will be perfect and all my pains will go away, you work way harder because it's the one thing that matters, quote unquote. But most often it's a lie. Even like actors will tell you who win Oscars. Like this is like the pinnacle of acting, right? It's getting an Oscar, winning best actor, winning best picture, winning best director. It's people have like thought about this from like age 5 years old who wanted to be an actor. They will tell you, yeah, I got the Oscar. Like it's on the wall. Like my marriage isn't doing so well and my kids don't like me. It's like, it is a situation where no matter what award or accolade, even people who sell their companies for hundreds of millions of dollars or even billions of dollars, they will say, yeah, I got the money. Okay. Like I'm still me. And it's not that much different.
Oh my gosh. It's something that I remind myself all the time that like we have to live happily now. And I think there's a quote, it's like wherever you go, there you are.
There we go.
Yeah. I knew it was from some book or
yeah.
And something that really helped me recently is like understanding that and reading some like Stoic quotes where basically we have to understand that there's literally only one thing in the world you can control, and that is your mind. Even your body you cannot control because you can get sick in a random place, you can be thrown in jail. And so that means that regardless of what's happening in your life, you can choose inner peace by reducing your judgment of what's happening around you and reducing your judgment of yourself. And really evaluating how you're spending your day-to-day life, whether that translates to your overall life you want to live.
Definitely. I think on this note, at some point you actually have to start living life.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's like there's a perception, especially like in the Asian community, that your teens and 20s are for some X goal, and after that you finally chill and relax. Like once you hit something, then you're good.
That's so miserable.
I know. It's like you really want to ruin the time when like you're growing up and you have like, this is like such a unique time in your life, right? Your teens and your 20s. Like there's stuff that here that you will never experience, or you like that you almost can't experience later on. And you're gonna like just give that up for like some goal, and if as soon as you cross the finish line something changes, I think it's a great lie. And I think it's often, I mean, I understand why it happens, because like often in our culture, like my parents at least were immigrants, right? So like they kind of had that mentality, which is like, oh, like we have to put food on the table, we have to provide, we have to make it to the US, and then like in the US everything's good and everything will be okay, right? But I think for us especially, another idea here I like to think about kind of on the stoic note is like, I think the quote is like, is this what I so feared? Something like that, right? Which is like, I have this almost fear of like, oh, like what if it all comes crumbling down? What if I lose everything? What if like I get like $0 this month, or the channel goes dying and like no one wants to watch me anymore? And like at that point, if I think about like, if I actually almost like fear set, which is like an exercise that you kind of like go down this note, which is like, think about what would actually happen. What is the worst that would happen? Let's say I earn $0 and I have to like be supported by my partner, or I have to move back home. Will I die? No. Is that really the worst thing in the world? No. I mean, obviously it's inconvenient, and I like having a business, and I like being financially like flexible and stuff like that. And I like living in different areas, but like if I actually had to move home, like that's okay, you know? Yeah. So once you realize like what is actually the worst that would realistically happen, and kind of like project yourself there, it's not as bad as most people. That's kind of like helps with the stress, because it's like it's not as bad as you actually think.
Yeah, that's true. That's something I try to do too, whereas to center myself, because sometimes I'm like struggling with this problem, you know, of like maybe YouTube's not doing so well, you know, and then my friend's talking about how his boss made him work late onto Christmas Eve, and I'm like, oh man, I sound dumb now. You know, and so it's all a matter of perspective, where like I think that every single person in the world has problems, but there are worse problems to have. And it's not to say that it's good to always be like, oh well, I have it better than that person, but it's to really put things in perspective, that like at least I have a healthy body, at least I have all these other things, that wouldn't it actually be so silly to use my mental stress on things that are actually a lot better problems to have, you know? And so I think it's really important to take a step back and be like, actually, you know, crying about this B+ is not something that important to me, you know?
Definitely. Yeah, on that note, spoiler alert, the richest people in the world also have a lot of issues, and their issues are probably more stressful than some of my issues. Yeah. Let's be honest. Like, even Elon Musk, like he probably has like, I think there's a line he literally says in like a Lex Fridman podcast or something, which is like, my mind is a storm. You would not want to be me. People want to be me. You would not want to be me. Yeah. It's like, holy shit. This guy's like literally worth like $300+ billion and is the richest man in the world. And he's like, you would not want to be me. I'm like, okay, I'll take your word for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, no matter who you are, what you're in, if you think that there's some kind of finish line, which is like, oh, all my problems will be solved and I'll be this blissful existence, it's never there. It's never going to come like that. Everybody deals with stress. Everybody deals with anxiety. Everybody has setbacks. Everybody has problems. Everybody has to deal with that, no matter who or where they are. And the only way to get through that is to kind of do the work that everybody has to do. So like, for example, let's say you're like dealing with stress or something, or you're feeling lonely. No matter who you are or what your bank account says or what job offer you have or what diploma you have, like to solve that problem, you have to do the work of like meeting new people, being vulnerable, making new friends to kind of solve that problem. You could be Elon Musk, or you could be like a 16-year-old in high school, right? And if you're lonely, you have to do this essentially the same thing, right? So yeah, like more and more and more as I realize, as I like achieve goals and as I miss goals, right? I'm like, my mind is still there. Wherever you are, there you are. Like, you kind of just have to do the work internally to actually like solve those problems.
Yeah, for sure. It's important to remember that everyone's problems are valid, and you're always going to have problems. and you can make peace with that. And
Definitely.
just kind of get excited about solving the next problem then,
Yeah. It's like accepting that one, you will always have problems. So like there's not some kind of blissful like stop judging yourself for having problems. I think a lot of people are like, oh, I shouldn't feel sad. I shouldn't be stressed. I shouldn't be anxious. I shouldn't be lonely. I should be better. Like, don't stop. The first step is to stop beating yourself up for having the problem in the first place.
Yeah.
Because that makes it so much worse, right? Like, let's say I'm feeling hungry, which is like not a good feeling or whatever, right? And I'm like, oh my God, like I'm such a loser. Why am I so hungry? Like I should have eaten. Like, oh, like what the hell's wrong with me? Dude, I'm making the problem worse unnecessarily. So step one is to like stop beating yourself up for some issue, right? For even having the problem in the first place. And then step two is recognizing there's never going to be an existence where I have zero problems. So just accepting I have this set of problems. It could be way worse. I could have like no family. I could have like no friends. I could like be on the street. I could be homeless. Like things could be so much worse. And there will never be an existence with no problem. So now it's time to systematically and like logically actually work on solving them.
Yeah, for sure. Stoicism
Indeed.
is so helpful.
Very useful.
Yeah. Okay. So we've covered a lot of really great topics and like concepts. So before we go into a couple of the Ask Amy questions that were submitted, is there any topic that you want to talk about or that we haven't really discussed?
No, I think that's pretty much it. Let's go into the Q&A.
Awesome. Yeah. It's so funny because, of course your expertise in your channel is like about like software engineering, but like you said, you bring that philosophy here, which
definitely.
is like, which I think is just like so much more interesting to me and applicable to more people. And that's kind of the thing of like why I make my study videos the way I make my study videos. They're not really study videos. It's more about like life, and that's so much more interesting than how to get A's and like
Spoiler alert for people who are this far in the episode. I mean, I care about helping people with computer science, but I don't spend most of my day thinking about computer science at this point, right? I spend a lot of my time thinking about these like more like philosophical existential questions like stress, problems, lifestyle, happiness, and I kind of like weave that into my videos. So I feel like that is like, I could just like list off, there are like 3 things you have to do to get a job in tech. It's I could just like repeat the same statement over and over and over again, but I find like the mindset way more interesting personally.
Yeah,
so
for sure. And I'll have to put in the description box that like one thing that I learned from you in a video that I forgot the term. It was like it was like infinite goal or something. It's like infinite skill or something.
Something
like
that.
Yeah, cool. I have this question submitted. How did you find your path in life? I don't know how to choose college, major. The world seems so big. So how would you answer that, Aman? And maybe you can kind of explain like your decision going to computer science and then why you were brave enough to, eventually quit and do full-time YouTube.
Yeah. There's a couple things here. I'll kind of talk about what actually drew me to computer science first and then kind of give my high-level thoughts on mindset at the end of that. So what drew me to computer science was a couple things. First of all, I was always a tech nerd as a kid. So even when I was 12, 13, 14 years old, I was watching tech review videos. I actually remember when I was 16, I snuck out of class to watch the Apple event on my phone in the bathroom.
Oh.
I was that obsessed with like tech. I was like, oh my God, like I literally cannot sit here and like listen to like social studies while this Apple event is happening. I need to like watch it on my phone and like see the new iPhone coming out because I was so obsessed with technology and new innovation and stuff like that.
Yeah.
At the time. So that was one thing that was going on. The second thing was, I remember my freshman year of high school, I was enrolled in orchestra because I played the cello. And I was doing band, orchestra, and Spanish. And one of my family friends who was like an engineer at a company or a local town was like, hey, they actually made a new computer science class at the high school. This is the first year we're ever offering computer science. And he felt like computer science was kind of the future. It's like, it was really big then, but it's going to even be bigger in the future. So you should consider taking that and see if you like it because you're such a big tech nerd. So I took that class and then like I dropped orchestra. Then I was like, whoa, this is actually so interesting. I didn't like love it. Like it wasn't like my dream come true, but I just found it like really inherently interesting. And then afterwards I ended up like, as they were creating new classes for like my cohort of students who first started, I would just take the next one. So I took like another CS class. I did this like internship in high school with a tech company as a class where we like built apps and stuff like that. My senior year, or like the summer before my senior year, I did like CS research with the college and stuff like that. And then I decided to, on that note, just do it like as my actual major. So what I've learned from that is number one, it is kind of random. Like I don't think anybody in high school really understands like what these subjects actually are and the impact they have long term.
Yeah, like what jobs they translate to.
Yeah, like I didn't really understand computer science, engineering. I don't think I even knew what consulting was at the time or anything like that. I was just kind of a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just kind of picked it arbitrarily. And kind of on that note, the world is huge. There are so many different majors, so many different colleges you can study, so many different careers you can do. Honestly, I feel like the best thing to do is just focus on the life you want to live. So what is the lifestyle you like at the end of the day? Like, for example, if you're someone who loves socialization, you love interacting with people, you want to meet new people every day, you want to help them, you want to talk to them, maybe a field with like more of that social element is for you, like teaching or even medicine too. Like medicine is actually a very social field, right? Or if you love like working on like high level problems kind of like by yourself and thinking about the like days and days and days, maybe like more of an engineering aspect is a thing for you. So kind of like lifestyle design, I think, is like a good way to pick what you want. But also on that note, it kind of doesn't really matter that much I think, because you can be successful, quote unquote successful, with pretty much anything you do, right? Like whether you pick accounting or business or computer science or chemical engineering or philosophy or anything, right? Sure, there's like different career paths, different outcomes there, but it's really about your mindset and your attitude you bring into it. Because I know for a fact, like even if I picked, let's say I didn't do computer science, let's say I did medicine, my life would be completely different, but I'm probably would have similar issues related to like stress, anxiety, loneliness that I would have faced there. Maybe I would have like different issues, but I don't think my life would be like much worse or much better if I picked a different career path. I think it would just be me just engaging with different things. So all I can advise here is just don't have so much pressure on yourself. LNXDR59. Like kind of like take a step back and realize like, hey, both of us have actually graduated college several years ago. It's like, okay, like whatever you think you want to do at this moment, you're not going to go much wrong. And just like focus on the mindset and philosophy of what you want and just go with it.
Yeah. You can make mistakes. Like technically, I don't use chemical engineering at all anymore, but I gained problem solving skills, friends, the ability to do really hard things with very little instruction. And so I took that to consulting. Okay, well, consulting I also left. Now I take the skills and things I gained to YouTube. It's like no effort is wasted. And what I think is actionable is like you just have to try different things. There's no way if you like something unless you try it. And that's a great opportunity to do when you're young. Like when you're young is not the time to be like, oh, I am certain I want to do computer science, unless you're genuinely like, so obsessed with it. But it could really limit yourself to like your true calling if you try to make your spike too rigidly. Yeah,
you definitely don't want to pigeonhole yourself into one thing unless that is actually your calling from day one. But even then, it's like I'm slightly skeptical of that because like, how does a 6-year-old know what like being a software engineer is like? You know what I mean? Yeah. Are you sure that like you intrinsically want that, or did your parents tell you that's a good stable career that you should just go with? Like I know some people who are like, oh, like from day one I wanted to be an accountant. And I was like, really? Are you sure? Right. Another aspect to this is often you just find what works eventually. So like I think both of us have like quite a winding path. Like I guess I did CS, but I also am doing YouTube full time now. So it's like it's quite interesting, I think a lot of people beat themselves up with like, oh, I wasted my years doing this degree, or why did I get that job? I wasted it because I didn't like linearly go through this. There's a book that actually talks about this called The Pathless Path. I don't know if you've seen that book.
No, I feel like you read a greater variety.
Yeah, it's a book kind of on this note, which is like how to like think about your career in life. And the thing he talks about here is like most people are not just like linearly doing one after another. I think there's a perception in life that it's like, oh, you do this class to get this major, to do this internship, to get this job, and then you get this promotion. It's all this like one linear path. But most people actually wander quite a bit. Maybe they do a chemical engineering major and they pivot to consulting and then they pivot to business, right? That is kind of like this, It's not like anything is really wasted. First of all, it's life, right? Like you're just enjoying your life. You know what I mean? You're living life. And there's tons of skill transfer. And often you are better at doing something that is not like linearly up because you had experiences there. So I think people need to stop putting so much pressure on themselves to like get it right, get the one major choice right so I can have a perfect life going forward, and recognize that most people wander quite a bit and take like different opportunities and different paths and find what they actually want to do through that.
Yeah, and the foundation just to get excited about trying different things if there's not that one thing. Because that's just more fun. If you could give just one piece of advice how would you recommend someone to feel more confident?
To feel more confident.
Yeah, just one thing.
Just one thing.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna go down the Hormozy route again. He has a phrase which is like, competence breeds confidence.
Yeah.
And I really resonate with that. I'll open up a bit here. I think like, especially in high school and middle school, I struggled with like my body image. Like I like felt uncomfortable taking my shirt off and like in front of people in public, and like at the pool and beach and stuff like that. Like that was like never a thing I would do. And I was like, I like always like saw myself as like, like I'm really ugly and stuff like that. And only after I actually started working out and saw like the changes in my body and like saw like how that changed visually in a mirror, that combined with like realizing when I like took my shirt off for the first time for other people, they're like, you actually just look normal. And I was like, wait, what? I don't look like this hideous monster. Because that was like my perception. I was like, like I'm like really, really ugly or something like that. But then I was like, wait, it's actually quite normal. And that combined with like working out in the gym, and seeing those changes, like putting years and years and years and effort in the gym and actually like growing confident as I saw those changes in my own body, like that was insane to me. So honestly, it's like it's really hard to look in the mirror and fool yourself into being confident. You can tell yourself, I'm beautiful, I'm like over and over and over and over and over again. But if your heart just doesn't believe it, you're not going to listen, right? And I have found that it's like, okay, if I don't feel good about the way I look, maybe I can actually just work on improving that. And like, I found that the confidence follows afterwards.
Yeah.
So
confidence is internal. So it has to come from the inside too. So the core of what you said is like your confidence came from having pride in yourself and understanding your efforts and ability. And even if that didn't translate to a six-pack, for example, you understood what you went through and the trials and errors of lifting and like getting one more rep and pushing yourself. And inherently that's going to internally make you realize like I'm worthy regardless of the outside.
Definitely. I think it's also, I just really resonate with the gym in general. Not even, and just because I feel like it's a great analogy for like everything in life, which is like through effort, pushing yourself, progressive overload and improving like week by week by week, you one can actually see the changes in front of you, and two, you can do hard things. And that I feel like it is just a confidence booster for everything. It's not just the gym, it applies to a lot of things. So honestly, that I feel like that was the main thing that did it. I think it's a lot of like, I mean, in the world of business too, like I would be insecure. I was like, like I don't have this crazy, like, even though I guess I did like well on paper in terms of job offers, I was like, I didn't make it to a quant company. I didn't make it to like Google or something like that. I was like, I feel bad. Like I didn't get into like MIT or something. But it's like through like going down my own path, which is growing my own business, living the lifestyle I wanted, I was like, I actually quite like this. And like, maybe I wouldn't enjoy, sitting behind a desk and working like a 9-to-5 job, even if it had like a crazy name like Google or a trading company and stuff like that.
Yeah. And you will no longer feel afraid of judgment from other people because maybe on paper, you might not go to MIT, but you are the expert of everything you've done in the past. And you're like, I'm competent in this area. I worked very hard here. I go to the gym. I'm a good friend, brother, whatever. Right. And so people's judgments just don't matter at all because you understand yourself. And
Definitely.
That's how,
Yeah. I think people's judgments are like an interesting, I feel like, the way I have to deal with over the past year, especially because like I said, I left my full-time job and I think people still think I'm crazy in like my hometown. Like, first of all, they don't actually know anything about my business because they're not like creators. They don't understand how business works. So like, I remember there was a time a few weeks ago when I was in my hometown for Thanksgiving, maybe like a couple months ago actually. And we were like sitting around the table with all these people who I went to high school with. And they were like, Aman, do you feel fulfilled in your career path? I was like, bro, like the level of judgment is coming off of you right now. What? They were acting as if like I was like, I don't know. It felt like they were like acting as if I was like homeless or something like that. It's like, are you more fulfilled? I was like, I guess. But also it's like, what kind of question is that, Or not the question. It was the tone that they were like saying it with. As if I was like doing some crazy career switch.
That they felt bad.
Yeah. And they were like, like, are you okay? Like, is everything good? I was like, dude, what? Things are going well. Like, it's okay. So yeah, I think it's just like recognizing one, these people literally know nothing about me. They don't do anything with business. They don't do anything with content. They don't do anything with entrepreneurship. So not that like that is a bad thing for them. I'm happy for them in whatever career path they want, but they don't actually understand like the effort and the work I've put in and like the results that have actually happened over the past 6 months.
Yeah.
So you can't like take their judgment or their advice because they're literally just random people who don't know anything about you.
Yeah. And you feel actually be more fulfilled, like way more fulfilled doing this
Oh,
than
absolutely.
your software engineering
Yeah,
job.
definitely.
Plus, you'll find that especially when people like judge others for following their dreams, it's mostly a projection because they're like, oh, I wish I had the guts to do
Definitely.
that, like internally, you know?
Yeah, 100%. They're often like, yeah, they are just projecting the fact that they like wish that they could like do something else or like follow their quote unquote passion when they judge other people. So yeah, just recognizing like, I think one level up I've had recently is like, who do I actually take advice from? I think when you're a kid, you're like taught, especially like in like my culture, is like, oh, like anybody who you should just take advice from everyone. Like listen to like your elders, listen to this person, listen to that person. But as you age, you start to realize like these people have no context on you and your life in any way, shape, or form. It's like, why are you even taking advice from them? I think it's important to like listen to mentors, to reach out for advice, and to like get coaches and talk to other people. But you have to understand they are often giving you advice for what they would want for themselves, right? It's like, let's say someone says, oh, you should, like, let's say your parents say, oh, you should like get a 4-year college degree and go do a 9-to-5 job. And you're like 18 years old. It's like, I really don't want to do that. Instead, I want to, I don't know, like become a personal trainer, or I want to like start a YouTube channel. I really, really, really don't want to go to school. Their parents are often telling you that because they wish they did that earlier. And maybe things are different. Maybe they don't really know what your background is and what you want. And similarly, it's like, let's say you're running a business and they're like, no, you should get a 9-to-5 job. You should sit behind a desk and work a 9-to-5 job. It's like, you have to understand where they're coming from. So considering like, who are you actually taking advice from? Why are they saying what they're saying before you just like rotely listen to it?
Yeah. I've definitely had to learn that with my parents because of course they're very wise, and I learned a lot of very important and true things from them. But especially when it comes to career now and taking risks, I know I have to, you know, go with what my peers around me understand in like the current times.
Definitely. Yeah. Like my parents are extremely risk averse. I think it's like a very common thing, just because like what is their background? Where did they come from? What struggles did they deal with? And like, obviously I think this goes without saying, I'm very grateful for them. They have great advice. They support me in everything I do currently. But it's like, you kind of have to, you have to actually process advice. I think there needs to be like a step between advice or what you should do, and then your brain needs to be in between that before you just take it, right?
Yeah.
With anything. It could be YouTubers. It could be people. Like, if someone says you should wake up at 4 a.m. every day, like, you need to actually think, is that right? Why are they saying that?
Yeah,
what reason?
Put it through a machine
for
you.
There needs to be like a filtering process before
yeah.
you just like take everything that people say. Because people often say opposite things too. Like, someone will be like, oh, you should wake up at 4 a.m. and like lock in. And someone else will be like, you should sleep 9 hours a day. And the third person will be like, you should go out, right? The night before. It's like, how do you know who to take? If you just take everybody's advice, then you're not going to know how to do anything, really.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And you'll be unconfident if you do take everyone's advice.
There we go.
There we go. Wrapping it back to the
Yeah.
question. Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I'm so excited that you came to New York and you reached out. Thank you for being a go-getter and just shooting your shot, you know? So, yeah. I hope. Oh, let us know. What are your socials? Where can people follow you?
yeah, honestly, if you just search my name, Aman on YouTube, you'll find my channel. That's probably the best place to find me.
Okay.
So yeah, thanks
Cool.
for having me. It was great to do this.
Yes, thank you so much. And for those listening, we will have our podcast that is on Liftoff.
Yes.
Yes,
If
it'll
you want
be-
to see, like, I guess another version of this, kind of like more in Amy's background, on my channel, it should be there on Spotify and also my YouTube channel.
Awesome. Yeah, linked in the description. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.